One Halloween in 2022, I was hanging out with 3 of my friends. I was 15 years old, just like 2 of my friends, but one of them was 16. So, there was me, and then there was my buddy, whom we can call A, who was wearing a costume that looked like a mouse. Then there was my 16-year-old friend, let's name her B. She brought along another friend of hers, and we can call her C. I thought it might be fun to take a little break from the usual Halloween stuff like trick-or-treating or scaring kids. So I asked, "Hey, want to go to that park close to my place?" Everyone thought it was a good idea, and our parents said it was okay for us to go, so off we went. Now, my costume was pretty cool. I wore something that made me look like a dragon. I had a big mask that looked like a dragon's head. My friend A, as I mentioned, looked like a mouse. But friends B and C had chosen different outfits. They were dressed as cowgirls, but their costumes showed a lot of skin. That made me a bit nervous because sometimes people stare or make comments. As we walked to the park, I noticed something odd. There was this big black car, like those SUVs, moving really slow just ahead of us. It felt strange. Let me paint a picture of our neighborhood for you. The road we were on was sloping downhill. There were houses lined up on both sides of the road. And when you get all the way down the hill, the road turns sharply to the left. Now, right before that turn on the right side, there's this house. And next to that house is a small lane. This lane goes between the park and that last house. If you walk through there, you end up on a different street. There was this big black car ahead of us, moving really, really slowly. Then it stopped, right by the entrance to the park. I thought, that's a bit weird, but we just kept on walking. Then, a man, who looked like he could be someone's dad, got out of the car. He stood right next to it, on the side where we'd be walking past. This made me feel a bit uneasy. I stopped listening to the fun chat my friends were having. I wanted to keep an eye on this man. As we got closer, maybe about the length of a small bus away, I felt something deep down. You know, like when you watch a scary movie and know something bad's about to happen? That's how I felt. Every part of me was awake and alert. I looked around, trying to see if there was another way out. I saw that lane we talked about earlier, the one that goes to the other street. Whispering to my friends, I said, "Let's go down that lane, okay?" They didn't argue and followed me. As we turned into the lane, I looked back. The man was watching us, and then he got back in his car. That made me even more worried. Without waiting, I shouted, "Run!" My friends were confused, asking why, but I was already moving fast, heading back to my home. When we reached my house, panting and out of breath, they all looked at me with questions in their eyes. "Why did we run?" they asked. I told them about the strange feeling I got from the man in the car. Some of them thought maybe I was just being too cautious, but C nodded and said, "I felt weird too. It's good we left quickly." I've heard so many spooky stories before, and this taught me to always trust that feeling in my gut. It's like an alarm bell. I've got more tales where I felt this way, and maybe one day I'll share them too. The lesson: always trust your gut feeling. Even when everything seems fine, your instincts might just keep you safe. My name is Dominique. This story is about something that happened 2 years ago. Every time I think about it, I feel bad. I live in California. One day my best friend Fernie and I decided to hang out. We were both excited because school had just finished for the summer. We wanted to go to the mall and spend time together. But we didn't have a car. So like many times before, we took the bus to the mall. We got there around 3 o'clock in the afternoon and stayed for a long time. We had a lot of fun and lost track of time. By the time we realized how late it was, the sun had already set. It was around 8:30 p.m. The mall was going to close soon, especially since it was a weekday. We noticed that the mall was pretty empty. Not many people like to go to the mall during weekdays. Suddenly, I realized my phone was dead. I remembered there were some chairs at the front of the mall with charging outlets. We went there because I needed to call my parents to pick us up. We didn't have enough money for the bus ride home. Fernie and I sat down in front of each other. I was super focused on charging my phone and trying to call my parents. I didn't really notice what was happening around me. But then, I looked up and saw two older men walking towards us. They looked like they might not have homes. I thought one of them might want to sit down, so I got up and offered my seat. I was still very focused on my phone and trying to find a ride. Suddenly, Fernie nudged me a little, trying to tell me something, but I was too worried about how we would get home to ask her why. Then, out of nowhere, Fernie grabbed my arm tightly. She began pulling me and started to run. She shouted at me to keep running and not stop. Right in front of the mall's main door, there was an old, weird-looking gray car that looked like it had seen better days. We quickly ran past it. To be honest, I was really lost. I didn't understand why we were running so fast and felt a mix of fear and confusion. I risked a quick glance over my shoulder and saw the same two older men from earlier. They were running right behind us. My heart raced as I saw them get into that old gray car that was parked near the entrance. They were definitely following us. I was so scared. Fernie and I kept sprinting until we saw a bus stop ahead. There was a family waiting there. We thought that if we could get closer to other people, we might be safer. We rushed up to them, trying to blend in. We asked a kind-looking lady there if she had any extra money for us to catch the bus. Thankfully, she gave us some. I was so grateful, but I still didn't understand everything that was happening. Once we got on the bus and sat down, I turned to Fernie and asked, "Why did we run like that? What happened?" She was breathing hard from all the running, but she told me something I'll never forget. She said that after I offered my seat to the older men, they kept looking at us in a creepy way. One of the men, the one who was sitting, made a sign with his fingers to the other guy. It looked like he was telling the other man that it was just the two of us alone. She felt that they were planning something bad. She felt they might try to grab us, so she decided to run, pulling me with her. Hearing this, tears filled my eyes. I was so thankful to Fernie. Without her quick thinking, I can't imagine what might have happened to us. A couple of weeks later, while checking Instagram, we saw a post from our local news page. It was about the same mall we were at. The story said that two men had been arrested there for trying to kidnap young girls. The worst part was, one girl was still missing. My heart sank. We were so lucky that day. I was so relieved that those bad men were caught by the police. My name isn't important, but I need to share this with you all. I haven't told my close friends, Alyssa included, about this. Remember, always trust that feeling in your gut. This story happened in December 2019. One evening, around 8 p.m., I drove to my town's Walmart. I had to pick up some stuff for my work. Even though it wasn't too late, I still like to be careful. Whenever I go to a store at night, I make sure to park my car near the entrance right under a bright light. Safety first, right? So I went into the store, grabbed what I needed, and walked back to my car. Before starting my car, I checked for my phone. I sat there for a little while, just taking a moment. Then, there was a knock on my car window. I looked and saw an older woman. I always think people might genuinely need help, so I opened my window just a tiny bit to hear her, but made sure she couldn't reach inside. She started talking. "Hey, I saw you when you were walking to your car. You seem nice. Want to buy some tomatoes? I've got them in the back of my van." Now, this felt weird for two big reasons. First, it was December and I live in the Midwest. You don't find fresh tomatoes growing in gardens during this cold time. Second, who sells tomatoes in a Walmart parking lot so late in the evening? I told her no thank you, hoping she'd leave, but she persisted. "Darling, these tomatoes are the best. They're fresh from the garden." I was getting nervous and annoyed. I didn't like the feeling I was getting from her. It just didn't feel right. I slowly took out my keys from my jacket. Attached to it was my pepper spray. I held onto it tightly, making sure the lady couldn't see it. but I was ready to use it if needed. "I don't want to buy any tomatoes," I told her in a firm voice. "I have to go. Someone is waiting for me." That bit about someone waiting for me was a lie, but I thought if she believed someone was expecting me, she might think twice before trying anything. She didn't answer. Instead, she seemed a bit annoyed and began to walk to her white van. I noticed it looked like the kind of van people sometimes call creepy. Now, here's the thing about our Walmart parking lot. It has two ways in and out, but one was closed because of some work they were doing, so I had no choice but to drive past her van if I wanted to leave. I always drive carefully in parking lots because people around here just walk in front without even looking. But as I drove by her van, my curiosity made me peek inside. My heart dropped. Inside, I saw 3 big guys, 2 in the back and 1 next to the driver's seat. I pressed on the gas pedal hard, ignoring stop signs, and tried to get as far away from there as I could. I was scared. Looking back, I wish I had taken a picture of the van and told the police. But in that moment, all I could think of was to get away. To make sure they weren't behind me, I drove around using different streets. Thankfully, they weren't following. This experience made me trust my instincts more than ever. With this story, I want to tell everyone to be cautious. We often hear warnings about strange men, but women can be just as dangerous. It's scarier in a way because we're taught to trust other women. Now, whenever I see tomatoes, I remember that night. It reminds me of what could have happened. Please, everyone, always stay alert and safe. When I was 19 years old, I had a memorable experience. Just so you know, I'm a guy who likes other guys. At that time, I had a job that I was pretty good at. Because of how well I was doing, my boss sent me to Mexico for some special training. They said they'd cover all my costs, so I was like, sure, why not? I wasn't the only one going. In total, there were 6 of us. 2 guys, including me, and 4 ladies. After a couple of days in Mexico, 3 of our team members decided they didn't want to stay any longer. They packed up and left. So it was just me and 2 of the girls left to keep learning and training. Once we finished with our work sessions, we used to head back to our hotel and relax. A lot of times, we just ended up hanging out at the hotel bar. One evening, as we were chilling at the bar, a guy walked up and took a seat opposite us. We got talking and he told us his name was Rick. Rick mentioned that he was in Mexico for work and that he lived in California. We told him that we were in Mexico for work too and that we were from Colorado. Soon after, the 2 girls I was with told me they were heading out to a nearby store but would be back shortly. So, it was just me and Rick at the bar, chatting about this and that. I kind of got the feeling that Rick might be flirting with me, but he was being super subtle about it. Rick then said he was heading back to his room and, out of the blue, asked for my Snapchat. Maybe it was the drinks I had, but I thought, why not? And shared it with him. Later in the evening, when I was in my room, Rick messaged me on Snapchat. He wanted to know if I'd like to hang out. I thought it could be fun, so I said yes. Then he asked if he could come over to my room. Thinking that this might be a fun night for me, I told him where I was staying. In just a few minutes, there was a knock on my door. Rick had arrived. We got to talking some more in my room. I had sipped on some wine after reaching my room, so I was feeling a bit tipsy. Rick noticed and asked if I had had a bit too much to drink. I just nodded, confirming his suspicion. Things took a romantic turn then. Rick leaned in, we locked eyes, and before I knew it, we were sharing a passionate kiss. When Rick and I were still in my hotel room, he suddenly brought up my coworkers. He asked if they might want to join us. That felt weird to me. I'm not sure, I replied, feeling a little wary. And I don't know their room numbers either. I was lying, but something about the situation was making me feel uneasy. Rick said he'd be back soon because he wanted to grab some food. After he left, he quickly messaged me, asking if I knew a good place to get tacos and if I'd come along. Since there was a tasty taco spot near our hotel, I agreed. As we walked toward the taco joint, I held on to Rick a bit, feeling the effects of my drinks. But when we got there, we found it was closed. Just then, a shady-looking van pulled up nearby. Rick opened its back door and told me to hop in. "Why?" I asked, confused. "It's a special service from the hotel. It'll take us for a short city tour and drop us back," he answered. Something felt off. My instinct screamed at me to get away. I was starting to feel more clear-headed, and alarm bells were ringing. I declined and tried to walk away, but he grabbed my arm, pulling me closer to the van. Peering inside, I saw another man hiding in the shadows. Panic set in. I pulled my arm away forcefully, telling him I was heading back to the hotel. I quickly messaged my coworkers, explaining the situation, and then went to one of their rooms, breaking down. The fear was real, and the gravity of what might have happened was hitting me hard. Later, after I'd gone back to my own room, I heard a knock on the door. Looking through the peephole, I recognized Rick. My heart raced. I stayed silent, but when I didn't open the door, he began banging on it loudly. Another hotel guest confronted him due to the noise, causing Rick to run away. I never saw him again after that, and it was a wake-up call for me. Trusting strangers, especially when abroad, can be risky. I learned my lesson that day, and am grateful nothing worse happened. Please, everyone, stay alert and safe when in unfamiliar places. When this story took place, I was 19 years old, but this was 12 years ago. Let me paint a picture for you. I was a young girl with blonde hair. I was pretty small, just 5 feet and 1 inch tall, and I weighed about 108 pounds. Because of my size and looks, a lot of people thought I was only 15, even though I was older. So here's what happened. My boyfriend and I were super excited because we had saved up and planned our first big trip together. We were going on a cruise. This wasn't just any cruise, but one that would take us to different places in Europe and one stop in Tunisia. On cruises, you know, the big boat takes you to a place, stops for a bit, and lets everyone get off and look around. We were doing this at every place, excited to see new things and enjoy the sunny weather. But then something weird happened when we were about to get off the boat in Tunisia. Everyone who wanted to leave the boat had come together in a meeting spot. A person from the boat, like a helper or something, was telling everyone when to come back and other stuff we needed to remember. Then something odd took place. Another helper from the boat, not someone very important, came up to my boyfriend and spoke to him alone. He told my boyfriend that I shouldn't get off the boat in Tunisia. He didn't say why or explain a lot. He just kept saying it wasn't safe for me, and I should stay on the boat. We thought it was weird, especially because no one else was told anything like this. But I get scared easily, so I decided to listen and stayed on the boat. My boyfriend and I had a chill day, just laying in the sun and enjoying the quiet boat. After that day, we had more fun on our cruise and soon forgot about that strange thing that happened. But a few years later, we were watching a TV show. It was about bad things that happened on cruises, like people being taken away. In that show, they said that sometimes the bad guys would have their friends working on the boat. These friends would tell the bad guys on land about people they could take. Suddenly, we remembered that day in Tunisia and wondered if that's what almost happened to me. Now that I think about it, I really looked like an easy target. I looked like a young girl, even though I wasn't a teenager anymore. My boyfriend, though he tried his best to protect me, didn't look very strong. He was about as tall as most guys and wasn't very big. If something bad happened, someone might have been able to push him around and then grab me. That guy who worked on the boat and talked to my boyfriend? He probably knew something was up. I mean, why else would he tell just us not to leave the boat? No one else got that warning, only us. Oh, and another thing made us feel more certain about our scary thought. On one of the cruise nights, everyone got all dressed up in nice clothes. There was a big dinner, and also, there was a camera guy. He was taking nice photos of everyone to keep as a memory of the fun night. My boyfriend and I were really excited. We stood together, smiled big, and got our picture taken. We thought it would be a great memory for later. But when it was time to buy the photos, there was a big problem. All the pictures were displayed on a wall with numbers, so you know which one was yours. Everyone else's photos were there, but ours, they were missing. We looked everywhere and even asked the helpers, but no one could find our photo. It was as if someone made it disappear on purpose. Thinking about it now, maybe someone on the boat was trying to hide the fact that we were even there. If they planned to take me, they might want to say I wasn't on the boat to begin with. Honestly, we might just be thinking too much about it, but it all seems to fit together. In the end, I don't know why that boat worker told my boyfriend to keep me safe on the ship, but I'm so thankful he did.